Hello and welcome to Trusts and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And moving across the country, that's 10 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. No, I'm sorry. 10 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Mountain time, noon in the Central time, and 1 p.m. Eastern time. There you go. So, yeah, I actually can figure out time zones. And we talk about all things related to estate planning and the administration of estates and trusts, as you can tell from the title. So today I'm going to cover a topic that may sound a little bit, unimportant, but actually I think is quite so, and hopefully you will agree with me once I share with you some basic information. So um, the show title I think I published on social media is like something like "Prevent Identity Theft of the Decedent." So the problem, I'm sure you've heard of the problem of identity theft, and you may very well have been a victim. I know I was when I joined the Navy back in 2006. I got to my first billet in Okinawa, Japan in December of that year, and within a week or two found out that my identity had been stolen. And it took, gosh, almost 2 years to get that cleared up. And the effort finally was won, if you will, when a friend of mine, a Marine Corps lieutenant colonel, who was head of the Defense Counsel's office in Okinawa, took it upon himself to help me out because I had reached kind of a brick wall in trying to get people back in the States to help resolve the problem. The various credit card companies lost somewhere between $50 and $100,000, and there you go. So um, the statistics are a little bit tough to pin down. So the Federal Trade Commission estimates about 9 million Americans a year suffer from identity theft, which would be a little bit less than 3% of the population. Um, Other estimates are as high as 22, 23, 24 million Americans a year, which is approaching, what, 9% of the population. Now, presumably, children's identities are not being stolen, so it's a higher percentage of adults, but somewhere between perhaps 4 or 5% and maybe 10, 11% of adults identities are being stolen each year. It appears, according to the data anyway. Now, among deceased individuals, a company called ID Analytics estimates that 2.5 million deceased persons' identities are stolen each year. Now, I was not able to determine whether that's included in the overall identity theft statistics, but still, if we go with the lower figure, 9 million, so that means almost 1 in 4 identity thefts are of deceased people. And even if we go with the higher number, 1 in 10 identity thefts are deceased people. Now, this becomes a little bit confusing because fewer than, with the exception of during COVID, annual deaths in the United States are like around 2.2, 2.3 million a year on average. So you could say, wait, how could so many identity thefts be happening with so few deaths? So over the last 30 years, around 75 million Americans or so have died. So if again, are deceased people from 40, 50 years ago's identities being stolen? Probably not. I don't even know that necessarily it was 30 years ago, but just using 30 years as kind of a window. So that means 3% of deceased people's identities are being stolen each year. Now, if we were to tighten that window to say 20 years, it might be as much as 5%. So you say, well, that doesn't seem like very high odds. Well, uh, you know, if you've had your identity stolen and you know the hassle that you had to go through to get the problem fixed, it's not very comforting that only 3, 4, 5% of identities are stolen per year. That's actually high enough to make it like 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 people are having their identities stolen. So if we put it that way, that actually sounds more likely than 3 to 5%. So the reality is it's a huge problem, and more to the point, it can be a huge hassle to get it resolved. So if you are the administrator or the executor for an estate, or you're the beneficiaries, although in the end the estate might not lose a lot of money, because there are limits to the losses that can be suffered through identity theft, in terms of credit cards, for example. Um, to have someone's identity stolen, then to have property tied up, or to have blowback because the identity the identity information was used falsely for someone to get a job or get some kind of government benefits. All of that could cause additional legal fees to the estate. It could tie up the estate so that it can't close as quickly, and delay the time that it takes for the beneficiaries to get the various legacies and transfers of property, etc., to which they're entitled. And so it's a important issue to deal with. I would also add that um, another issue is just the integrity of the system. So, for example, canceling the voter registration of a deceased person. I'm sure. I'm not sure, but anyway, you may have heard about the old jokes about how many dead people vote in Chicago elections. That's been a saw that's been around for literally decades upon decades. But if indeed we do care about the integrity of our elections, then when a loved one dies, or if we have professional responsibilities like mine, so when we're handling the affairs of a deceased person, we should cancel their voter registration in order to make sure that there isn't some ballot floating around out there that is improperly used. So for all of these reasons, it's important to pay attention to potential identity theft of a decedent. I'm going to talk about three areas to look at that aren't so obvious. So it's probably pretty obvious to get credit cards locked down, and in some cases, credit card companies will even just hearing that a card holder has died, they will lock an account even without being formally notified. I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about some, I think, less obvious areas that can nonetheless create some significant areas for identity theft. And those are passports, voter registration, and Social Security and Medicare. Okay. Now, obviously, for someone who is not old enough to be getting Medicare yet, maybe that's not a problem. However, anyone who's worked has a Social Security number, and having that number can be very, very useful in stealing a deceased person's identity, even if they're not drawing benefits yet. And as well, for someone who maybe is not eligible to vote, so they didn't register to vote. Okay, so then you don't have to worry about that. Not everybody has a passport either, but a lot of people do. And so it's an area that we do want to attend to, and make sure that it's been handled. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and take a look at a couple of these. Okay, here we go. So let's start out with passport. Okay, so if you were to Google cancel passport of deceased person or something like that, you're going to come up with this page. By the way, I'm going to put all of these URLs in the show notes, so you don't have to do the Googling. You'll have them there. But in the passport section under report my passport lost or stolen, you say, well, okay, but someone who's died, their passport isn't necessarily lost or stolen. No, you may have the passport. So here's a section: how do I cancel the passport of a deceased relative? Okay, and actually the process is very simple. So assuming you have the passport itself, okay, so you take the passport, a certified copy of the death certificate, okay, that's an original certified copy, okay, and a letter requesting the cancellation and return or destruction of the passport, okay, and you write something very simple, dear consular lost and stolen passport unit, or dear clasp, enclosed is the passport for the deceased. Please cancel the passport and either return it to me at this address, or destroy the passport. Signed, whoever you are. Now it says here deceased relative, but as a professional fiduciary, I've used this for people whose estates I've been administrating, and it's just fine. The State Department doesn't care whether it's a relative or not. What they care about is getting these documents. Now, when I submit as as an administrator or an executor, I do put a copy of my letters of administration in the package, just so if there ever were a question, do I have authority to be doing this? They can see the court has granted me authority. So if you're acting as an executor or administrator, personal representative, whatever title you're going under, I would recommend including a copy of the court document. It's a matter of public record anyway, so it's not like you're sharing something that's private, and that way there's no question that you have the authority. And you can see here's the address you sent it to in Sterling, Virginia. Okay, it takes several weeks for them to process it, and then lo and behold, several weeks later, I always ask for the passport back. That way I know it's been handled. And there's been no slip ups, and the passport is mailed back to you along with the copy along with the certified death certificate. So you're not, you have to pay for each death certificate that you get. So they'll return it to you so you can use it again if you need it. And you'll get it in a manila envelope, and it'll be stamped canceled, I think is what they stamp on it, whatever the thing is. And now you know that it's been done. And even if it were subsequently to get stolen or something like that, it's on the record with the State Department that it's been canceled. So if somebody tries to use it and it's scanned in the system, that person is going to be nabbed for using a passport illegally. And as well, it has the canceled in it, and so it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to use in any event. So it's a very simple process. Now, anytime I do something like this, I always send it certified mail. That way I can track it. I don't ask for a return receipt. Doesn't really matter, as long as I can track it. Which is what the certified mail allows you to do. It costs a little over $5, I think, to send it certified mail. But again, it's worth it to be able to make sure that it's been covered, and that the issue has been handled. Okay, so passport is the first issue to deal with. So the next one is voter registration. And again, in this case, so let's see, go here. Yeah. Okay. So I just Googled cancel voter registration for deceased person. Okay. Now I'm in Los Angeles. So in this case, the Los Angeles County Clerk is responsible for voter registration. I will put LA County in the show notes, but obviously many of you are in different jurisdictions, so it is going to vary from county to county, or in Louisiana, parish to parish. Okay, but again, the process is pretty simple. So you're going to fill out this form, request cancellation of a deceased voter application. Okay, and you put the voter information here, you put the requester's name here, relationship. Okay, now again, spouse, parent, child, they're assuming it's a relative. But again, I've done this as an administrator, as a professional fiduciary. And again, when I submitted it with a copy of my letters of administration, so that there's no question that I have the authority to do this. Okay. And now here in LA County, you see you can return it by mail, you can return it by fax, you can return it by email, which is really easy. And all I did this a few months ago on an estate. I just scanned the documents, include this form signed by me, and well, actually, filled out this form in a PDF. These days, you can fill out a PDF. It's easier sometimes than printing it out and filling it out and scanning and all of that. You can sign the PDF. Okay, and I included a copy of of my letters of administration. You can go real simple online. There's Adobe. You can go on Adobe's website and you can combine PDFs, okay, into one overall PDF. So everything's together, nothing gets separated. Just attach it to an email, and email it to, in this case, voterin.rrcc.lacounty.gov. Okay, RRCC, Register Recorder County Clerk. Okay, and you're not going to get any confirmation, at least I never have, on canceling of a voter's registration. However, once it's submitted, hopefully they are going to follow through, and depending on how long you have sort of control of their mailing address or their residential address, you'll see if over the next year or so, voter information, a sample ballot or whatever comes in, and so you should be able to tell if in fact it was taken care of. So again, not difficult to do, not a lot of time to do, well worth taking though, because the time and cost of dealing with identity theft is much greater than any time you would spend on this. Okay, so the third one I'm going to talk about is Social Security, Medicare. And where is Social Security, Medicare? Here it is. Okay, so report a death. So this is Medicare.gov. Again, I will put this link in the show notes, because this will be the same throughout the country. So how do you report a death to Medicare, which also then reports it to Social Security? Well, you're actually reporting it to Social Security, as it turns. It's funny, you're on the Medicare.gov site, okay, but you're actually reporting it to Social Security. Now, you need to have the decedent's Social Security number. If you have a copy of their death certificate, you will have a copy of their Social Security number, because that is reported on a death certificate. Okay. Now, typically, the funeral home will report the person's death to Social Security. Okay. So if you give this, and typically the funeral home is going to ask for a copy of the death certificate. So they're going to have the person's Social Security number. You can always double check with them and make sure they're going to do it. I found that they typically do. Okay. Now, if you're concerned, I had a situation where I was not involved with the funeral or making the funeral arrangements or anything like that. I got involved with it after all that had happened, I called the funeral home to check if, as a matter of policy, they reported the death to a decedent to Social Security. They said they did, but they couldn't confirm on this for this particular decedent whether they had. So I just called Social Security myself, and I reported the death a second time, and I noted to them that I noted to the person I spoke to that I wasn't sure if the death had been reported previously. Wanted to make sure that it was, so that there wasn't any problem with the death being, with the Social Security number not being marked as for a deceased person. So the person I spoke to was happy to take the information, but they would not confirm if the death had been reported previously. So the Social Security people are very, very, very careful about giving out information. It can be, frankly, very frustrating dealing with them sometimes, but nonetheless, again, it's a pretty simple thing to do, and something that absolutely, if you're not sure that the funeral home has reported the person as deceased to Social Security, you absolutely should take the time to do it again. It never hurts to have it reported a second time, but it can save an awful lot of grief down the road. So now, and there's one other thing that you want to do, and I'm gonna do a quick search for it here, because okay, and that is the person's driver's license. Okay, driver's license, or state ID card if they don't drive any longer. They may be, so elderly that they don't have driving privileges any longer, but they may still have a state ID card. Usually, it's the Department of Motor Vehicles that issues those cards, in addition to driver's licenses. So, what do you do about that? So again, just and this is obviously like voter registration is going to be, well, voter registration is county by county. Driver's license is typically a state issued document, so step by step. So what do you do in terms of having a driver's license canceled? So I just cancel driver's license of deceased person. In this place, in this case, that didn't click through. Let's find the DMV. That's transfer. Yeah. So the this is what I found last time. I think is it was very hard to find information on, if not impossible, on. Oh, that's here we go. On the DMV's website. What you do, but are you an executive? Okay, so snug. So this is someone selling a service. I'm trying to remember where on the DMV's website. Where on the DMV's website I found it. So let's go to dmv.ca.gov. Okay, and here you go. Search here, deceased driver. Let's see what we get. Okay, search results for deceased driver. And you would think it would pop right up to the top, but it doesn't. So you're probably going to have to search around on the DMV's website. But there'll be a form, as there always is. You fill out the form, you submit it. Now, in my case, the case I did most recently anyway, the person's driver's license had been lost. And so I reported it as such. Okay, you're interested in handling the matters of a deceased person. There you go. So service advice, yes. Okay, decedent driver's license and identity. Okay, Here you go. Handling the matters of a deceased person. Okay, here you go. All right, here's okay. As you need to address the following. Here's a whole list of things to do. Okay, and in the end, as I recall, I think I just called the DMV and asked them what to do, and they told me what form it was. Okay, here you go. Well, this is for a disabled person's license plate. Those need to be returned, et cetera, et cetera. So, on the most common form of ID, it is interesting. It is the most difficult to figure out how to cancel it. It took me more time dealing with the DMV than all the other three put together, typically, because it's so obtuse. You would think they would make it real obvious, but they don't. But those are the four places or the four areas where I recommend that you spend your time in preventing the theft of a decedent's identity. And again, I'll reiterate: passport, voter registration, Social Security, Medicare, and driver's license. Um, Credit cards. You do want to cancel credit cards, of course, but there are limits on um, how much it could cost you if a credit card is used after someone dies. And if you have a death certificate and someone charged something on the account after the person was deceased, in general, it's unlikely that the estate is going to be held liable for that. And there are statutory limits to what the losses are when an unauthorized charge is made. So I'll put links in the show notes so that you can access them as easily as possible. But do take a few minutes to attend. You should be able to do all of these. Well, you should be able to do the first three in about 15, 20 minutes. Maybe a little bit more if it includes, because it'll include a trip to the post office to mail the passport. And then, depending on how efficient your DMV is. I know the Alabama DMV is very efficient. You can go there. You don't wait in line very long. The clerks are not only very knowledgeable, but also they are very, very helpful. Okay, in contradistinction to here in California, where we just don't have the same level of customer service among the people at the DMV, at least the ones I've dealt with. Interestingly enough, there here in California, we have facilitation servicers who take care of DMV matters. But the one that I use on a regular basis does not handle processing the paperwork for the death of a decedent's driver's license. So you might think they would, but they don't. I guess it doesn't come up often enough, unlike registering cars and renewing driver's licenses and those things, to make it worth their trouble. And you can see it must be a hassle, otherwise they would make money off of doing it. So that'll vary. You know better than me the DMV in your home state, and so you'll know what you're up against. But it may take you 30 minutes, may take you an hour, may take you a couple of hours. But even so, take the time to do it and protect the estate from the potential hassle, the time, the energy that it would take to deal with the decedent's identity being stolen. So that's the show for today. Thanks very much for joining me. Thanks very much for viewing. And on tomorrow, then at 10 a.m. Pacific time, is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And we will be talking about traditions that build morale. This is something that I think the military is particularly good at. And we'll tell a couple of stories that hopefully will amuse you as well. So I invite you to tune in then. And then on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. And we will be talking about how to uncover valuable skills that you didn't realize you have that can enhance your professional prospects. So join us for that as well. And by the way, if you are not a subscriber, please do consider subscribing to our channel. You just click on the subscribe button there below on YouTube, and that way you'll get notified every time a show goes live, and you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes of the Way to Wow shows. So thanks again for joining me. Wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off. Marie, you are my belle. All the best, folks. I should be saying, by the way, courage at all times. Any of you who've gotten an email from me know that that's how I need to be signing off from now on. So courage at all times.